Hey everybody, welcome back to Video. So today we're continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. Today we have part 2 of our MiSTer in 4K via the RetroTink series. Yesterday I did some analog DAC fun, and today we're taking a look at DV1 mode HDMI to HDMI. I think a few people got tripped up yesterday. I was just having some analog fun, and today's going to be the HDMI exclusive video. Before you get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But the Direct Video 1 mode is absolutely stunning over HDMI, and it comes with so many amazing features. Right now, with new firmware on the RetroTink 4K, you're going to have an auto crop feature that allows you to have different crops at the push of a button. It is very fast, very quick, and makes this work so much easier. And speaking of fast and quick, it's so easy to go ahead and hook these two things up. You put an HDMI cord into your MiSTer FPGA, and you put it into HDMI out. I think I pointed to HDMI in right there, but you can read, pop it into the out port, and you are good to go. Now you do need to change something on your MiSTer INI file, and I much prefer doing this on Windows with a text editing application versus trying to do this on the MiSTer itself. If you're on Mac, I'll leave a description below what program you use because I do need to look that up. You will see here direct video equals 1 right now. That is because I've already enabled direct video for DV1 mode to get the video from the MiSTer into the RetroTink 4K. If you're using your MiSTer on a 1080p or 4K television, your standard sort of monitor, this is going to say equals 0. You need to switch it to equals 1 or else you're not going to be in DV1 mode and you're not going to be able to send the signal over to the RetroTink 4K or have any of that data come over. It just doesn't work like that. By default, HDMI limited should be equals 0, and that is what you want. Otherwise, you're using a limited color range over HDMI. That would not be advisable for this, but by default, it should be equals 0. To change this number, you just go ahead and hit backspace and put whatever number you want in. If it was 0, it would just be normal HDMI, but equals 1 is going to be DV1 mode. Go ahead and close that. It's going to ask you if you want to save. I'm going to hit don't save because I really haven't changed anything, but save that INI file. So go ahead and turn on your MiSTer, turn on your RetroTink 4K, and you should be getting output over the HDMI signal. This is the video coming out of MiSTer FPGA in direct video mode over HDMI, and it's going to go ahead and send all of the metadata over on cores that are going to support it, and some cores right now will do auto crop. A lot of them still need the firmware to push a button, but as cores get updated, that will of course change a long time, because this is still the early days and a lot of things are still being made as we go along. But Guardian Heroes here in direct video DV1 mode over HDMI is an absolutely glorious image to look at. The color rendition, the overall accuracy, everything here is just incredible. And that's not to say that the MiSTer FPGA scaler does a bad job either. It just doesn't get all the way to 4K. And I understand this is a limited use scenario. You have to have a MiSTer FPGA and you have to have a RetroTink 4K to achieve something like this. But if you have them both together, it's so much fun to combine them. Now you will see I'm on version 1.0.4 of the firmware, and I'm going to upgrade that in the video. But if you take a look at the input timing and detected mode, you're going to see MiSTer DV1 at 240p and the input timing there. The core is going to pull over data and take care of almost everything for you outside of the scale. But you'll see here, using different buttons on the remote control, the aux buttons, you're able to scale this around to whatever it is you would like it to be. But Melee here over DV1 video into the HDMI port, again, is just spectacular. This is as good as you're going to see it if you use direct video mode in HDMI. I've played an absolute metric crap ton of Melee on the Neo Geo in my time. I own the AES card. I play it on RGB over my PVM. This is as good as it's ever looked, and it's going to look incredible if you do the same exact thing. Now do be aware, what I mentioned earlier, auto crop is a newer firmware. If you take a look at version 1.0.4, what I started shooting this video on, you're going to see here that the cropping is not automatic on most cores. So you have to upgrade to at least version 1.0.5 or further to get the auto crop for HDMI sources over those auxiliary buttons on your remote. You can move further up than that, just read the patch notes on each firmware, but 1.0.5 is going to be the minimum to get auto crop, and that is going to be super important. Otherwise, you're going to be playing in a window that isn't quite scaled to your screen. But taking a look at something like Metal Slug here, it's one of my favorite series of all times, and I do think Metal Slug 3 is the best game in the franchise, but tell me down below which one you like the best. Again, the accuracy, the overall sharpness of the image, everything with nothing but DV1 data being sent over is a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. This is just great, and honestly letting the RetroTink 4K scale to 4K versus letting your TV do it more often than not I think is going to have a better result as well. Even if you are in gaming mode on your TV, my Samsung has more latency than the RetroTink 4K to do that scale, so I do benefit from it. And if you throw a little bit of a scan line over top here, the super Gaussian ones I'm using right now, the sky in the background, this golden hour sunset, just 100% comes alive with a little bit of scan line over the top. It's just taking the 240p video source from the MiSTer, and the RetroTink is doing the rest. But let's take a look at something like Geru Mark or the Wolf, something I showed you on the DAC version of this video yesterday, and this is now in DV1 mode over HDMI. Take a look at the colors, take a look at the overall sharpness, take a look at everything you're seeing right here. And in just a moment I am going to move over to the analog DAC source that I put into RetroTink 4K yesterday so you can get a better sense of what's going on. And if the image shrinks slightly, that's just because I was using a different scale mode as I captured. But you'll see here it is different. It does have a darker feel to it, and it's just a little bit overall different image. You can play around with whatever you want and achieve a really interesting result. And that's the great thing about this. Whatever you do, you get to have a good time playing around with all the different diverse settings. Yesterday's analog video was just me having a good time, so I hope you enjoyed that one as well. But what I want to do now is just give you a little look at what you're going to see on your screen, then give you a sample of what the audio is doing coming over on direct video and HDMI, so you can get a sense of the audio quality, which is spectacular as well. But you're going to know it works when you get an image, and when you open up a new core you're going to see HDCP active. Don't worry about that, but then you're going to get MiSTer DV1 240p. That's what matters on the top right hand corner of your screen. But take a listen to this audio coming over in DV1 mode, and I'll be right back.
Namaste. It's showtime! Face it straight! You are playing! 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 You are playing!
Absolutely awesome audio quality. If you heard a little bit of hum in the intro there, that is also on CPS2 original hardware. I do have some in my closet, and you're going to get the exact same little bit of hum. It's just part of the sample. But as we move over to Darkstalkers, again, this in DV1 mode using HDMI is just another incredible picture. You can put on scan lines, you can put on aperture mask, you can put on whatever sort of filters you want. After you get the video into the RetroTink 4K, the sky really is the limit as to what you want to do. And we'll move over here with just a little bit of a scan line again, and you can see a very slight difference. But that's what the fun part about this is. You can be very subtle about it. Just think of this as taking like maybe 1 to 2% of the edge off and kind of softening up the image with a little bit of scan line. But that's the great thing again. If you want the pure look, don't put anything on over the top. Just let the RetroTink 4K scale you to 4K. But you have so many different options. And again, just take a look at that moon in the background with a tiny bit of scan line over it. I think it looks absolutely amazing. And again, this just looks great no matter what I throw at it. But let's move over to Nintendo 64 here. Now this is a work in progress core, and be aware that I've slightly altered the scale in DaVinci Resolve because the core right now does leave a little bit of black bars somewhere depending on what the core is doing, because the Nintendo 64 can do a lot of different things with its video, so I have slightly adjusted this. But again, this just looks absolutely incredible. I'm not putting any filters over the top here because at least in Cruisin' World, I feel like this looks good bone stock into the RetroTink 4K, just scaled to that 4K resolution. All of the effects that Robert FPGA Zoom Spots have put into this core look incredible over the RetroTink 4K, and of course they look just as good on MiSTer FPGA, just not in that 4K resolution. But this is going to be such a clean, good way to play the Nintendo 64 core. It really does shine, and with all the different VI implementations within the core, you can have that softness that the Nintendo 64 should have, and then do nothing on top. But let's look at a pure 2D source here for Nintendo 64. There's not a ton of games on the system that are 2D, but this one right here is. Mischief Makers is just such a fun, incredible game. If you've never played it, I can't recommend you check it out enough. And it uses 2D assets versus what you're used to on the Nintendo 64 in 3D. And I wanted to see what 2D looked like coming over, because it's one of the more unlikely consoles to see 2D out of. And I will say here again, it just looks exactly like I would want it to. Now this game being in 2D versus Cruisin' World being in 3D, this is one where I think a little bit of a scan line over the top can help it ever so slightly. This is right now without any scan lines, and I'm very quickly going to switch over to the scanline source, and again I've been using Super Gauzy, and that's the one that I like the look of. And the wall, the background window there, everything with a slight scanline over the top just looks a little bit more pleasing to my eye. And do beware, if you're having trouble seeing the scanlines, I recommend you watch this video on a television or on something else that's large. If you're on your phone, definitely not going to be getting the same result. And it is available in 4K. Check the drop down menu as well. Let's move over to something on Sega Genesis. Ristar here has had some of my favorite colors on this system. I love the pastels and all of the bright vibrancy that you're going to get out of this game. Now I'm doing nothing here whatsoever except passing the DV1 HDMI signal into the RetroTink 4K, letting it handle all the decimation and other details, and just using the auto crop scale feature. This again just looks stunning. The color representation and accuracy is there because the core does such a good job and the RetroTink 4K does such a good job on top of that. You're combining so much awesome work from so many awesome people together into one package, and it really just is helping everything. And I know a lot of people asked about Sega Genesis because I didn't show a ton of it. I just absolutely love this here. It looks exactly how I remember from being a kid, except way clearer. Now my Sega CDX with my RGB cables has an absolutely incredible look as well. If I'm over on my PVM, I could totally put that same SCART cable into the RetroTink 4K and achieve a very similar result. But here on MiSTer, you get so many enhancements that the original hardware doesn't have. It is a super fun way to combine these devices together and really get the best of both worlds. But trust me, I've got plenty of original hardware, and I'm going to be doing some more RetroTink 4K videos on exclusive platforms. Dreamcast will be the first one coming up next week. But I think my main takeaway, the thing I've loved the best, was seeing the Neo Geo come over in DV1 mode. I absolutely love this hardware. I've got a very large collection for my Neo Geo, and I have my Neo Geo with a SCART RGB cable as well. But recently I've really just been playing Neo Geo on my MiSTer FPGA and letting my TV get to the final scale. And now with RetroTink 4K I can do it even better. And that's the great thing. These are just games that you know, love, and remember, made to look and function better. RetroTink 4K is so easy to deal with, and with Direct Video 1 mode off MiSTer, it really is just changing one line in an INI file, plugging the two things together, updating the firmware, and hitting a button to get your scale. And that really is the great thing. And now with the new RetroTink 4K firmwares that came out last week, you have all of these awesome auto-scaling options for the cores that don't send the instantaneous scale data over, and I'm sure more of those cores will get updated to support that. But that's how you get DV1 mode working on your MiSTer FPGA and your RetroTink 4K as far as HDMI to HDMI is concerned. If you have any issues or trouble, leave me a comment down below and I will try to help out. But that pretty much covers it for MiSTer FPGA. We've done an analog DAC video, we've done a DV1 over HDMI video, 2 days in a row, 2 helpings of MiSTer and RetroTink 4K, but this is such a fun device, I can't help but want to make 2 parts of the same video. Share it out like I said. If you have any questions, leave them down below, but I'm done and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.